and Ellie Brennan. So thank you all so much. And without further ado, let me introduce these amazing women. We are thrilled to have among us, and they kind of switch up the order, so I'm just going to have them raise their hand when I introduce them if y'all don't mind. But Mary Sommier, who started her career. And she started her career at the legendary Cave Paul's and is now wowing foodies at Gabrielle Restaurant, which she co-owns with her husband, Chef Greg Sommier. Greg and Mary named the restaurant after their daughter, which I just love, and she runs the front of the house today. Martha Wiggins, she was until recently the executive chef at the French Quarter Gastropub Sylvain. Zagat named her one of its 30 under 30 for New Orleans in 2017. She was also featured in Southern Living in 2017 as one of 30 women moving Southern food forward. And next is Kelly Fields. Kelly Fields, over here. She is the chef partner of Willa Jean, named after her grandmother. She has received numerous accolades, including Eater New Orleans Chef of the Year for 2016, as well as a nomination for the prestigious James Beard Award for Outstanding Pastry Chef. And finally, we have Christine Essig, who is the cook, chef, and owner at Coquette, and has been named as one of Food and Wine's People's Best New Chefs in 2015. And finally, we are thrilled to have with us Kat Kinsman, who agreed to moderate this panel. Kat is the senior food and drinks editor at Times breakfast focus site Extra Crispy. Along with gathering many impressive accolades in the world of food writing, Kat has also authored a memoir titled, I love this title, High Anxiety, Life with a Bad Case of Nerves. And it makes important contributions to the ongoing national conversations about mental health. And she was so kind to also visit us today at the center and really was generous with her time long past when she was supposed to be there talking to students. And so we really appreciated that. So I'm really excited for this wonderful panel, and without further ado, let me turn it over to Kat.
I'm so just thrilled to see so many of you out. I know you came for the food, you came for the drinks, but the important thing is that you came to support all of these incredible women who make food in New Orleans what it is. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes here because everybody's really got something to say. If I run short on words, it's because I'm absolutely gobsmacked to be in the presence of Leah Chase, who this is her as a chef and a leader and a civil rights leader and a graceful human who has showed people how you can run a restaurant and be an incredible person and philanthropist and just a human being. So thank you for the example that you have shown all of us. So we all read the news. We all know what has been going on in New Orleans and outside of there. The stories that get lost in the telling of all of this. We hear about things that have happened to people and happened to women. The stories that get lost about is about what women have done, about what women have achieved, about the kitchens that they have built, the dishes they have made, the life choices that they have made in order to feed people, to make people happy, to be, to serve everybody's pleasure. I run a website called Chefs with Issues that is all about the intersection of mental health and the food world. And I talk to a lot of chefs. And I think a lot of people are kind of unaware of, you know, they know that the hours it takes to be in a kitchen and you know, the dedication to craft and all of that. It takes a lot of personhood to be a chef, and even more so if you're a woman, because you are up against a whole lot of challenges in a profession that is not necessarily geared to your well-being. The hope that I have for restaurants moving forward, that I think all of the women on the stage are going to be part of, is creating cooking environments that are really bringing the next generation of restaurants into existence. They are showing by example how you can be a good, kind person, how you can lead with solidity and strength, how you can be really incredibly good at your job without being abusive, how you can lead with praise and goodness and toughness and all of these things together. And you sometimes have to work harder and harder for the accolades than maybe some of the men in your profession do. But all of the women on this stage have done an incredible job of that. And I really can't wait to see what is going to happen with restaurants in the future. You all have people who you mentor and you are lifting up and you are sharing, and the next generation, this generation of restaurants is absolutely incredible. This is my, sorry New York, I live in New York, this is my favorite eating city in all of America. I can say that without reservation. And when I look at how each of these women conducts themselves, and how their peers in other cities really show the way forward and do it without hesitation, do it without reservation. Somebody comes to them and says, I want to learn. They teach. Nobody's holding anything back. There's always a media narrative or pop culture narrative of women trying to keep each other down or claw or catfight. I've never seen that. But that's not how it actually works, and especially not for women in this profession who all are just there to help and lead, sometimes at great sacrifice to their own lives and their own well-being, but they do it, and they do it with aching bones and lack of sleep and not getting to see their animals and kids enough, that they do it, and they do it to make us happy. So thank you, all of you, for doing that. And Mary, turning it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. She had a lot to say, you know, a lot of truth in what you said. All right. Well, the way I'd like to get this started, I'd just like to hear from each one of you. What led you to a career as a chef, to cook? You know, why be a chef? Why work in a restaurant? Kelly?
I don't know what else we would be doing, honestly.
Yeah, but you know, what brought you to that? I mean,
I got in this industry completely by accident. I moved to New Orleans in 1996 to go to college, real college, as my parents still call it. And my senior year, I went to help my friend's parents own a bakery, and I went to help. I dropped out of school my senior year, and I haven't looked back since.
Oh, so, okay, that was good. So your first job was in a bakery?
Yep.
Okay.
Right on St. Charles Avenue.
Awesome. Who was it?
It was Your Daily Bread. It was like right
Oh, yeah, I know that place.
in the 90s.
Yeah. So I came into cooking. A family meal in our home was always a huge part of what we did at the end of every day. And over those meals, my parents would sort of talk, you know, across my sister and I sometimes, and they would complain, not knowingly, I don't think, but about how unhappy they were doing what they did every day. And I think the thing that inspired me to sort of jump into something that I really loved, not really thinking about, am I going to make a great salary, am I going to be able to like get married, do all these things, was doing something that was for me. I learned very early that my parents were working as hard as they were for us, which was such an amazing sacrifice, and I learned so much from that. That was really what brought me to it. We would spend the weekends with my grandparents. Probably a way to help my parents sacrifice was to send us to our grandparents every weekend. And we would cook with my grandmother, who was a second-generation German immigrant, and we had such a great time cooking with her, and that's just sort of where it started. That was the thing that I loved doing. Sort of being in that warm environment, that's what got me started. And that's when I went to Fate College, as my parents got me to school. I went to Fate College. That and I didn't want to wear pantyhose. I wore pantyhose every single day to work, and I was like, I never wear pantyhose every day. It's not happening. That's great.
Did your parents encourage you or support you?
My parents, well, you know, I went to a fully accredited culinary school,
Oh,
so they were always very much, you know, like, well, if it doesn't work out or you don't enjoy it, you can always transfer to a real college and do that.
They know my parents.
Yeah, I guess, I didn't know, but you know, it was sort of I think essentially I went from an early place in my career where I was trying to validate what I was doing for my family to actually really finding passion, and they saw that I was just happy and that I really enjoyed it, and that was a nice change. But yeah, we still talk about college. It's very expensive.
Yeah. How about you, Mark?
I think, I started working when I was 14 at a deli early in the morning. Kind of had a hidden job from my mother, even though she's like, I always knew that you had the job. I saw you in the bus stop every morning sneaking off. But I knew where you were going, so I didn't trip. And I just kept doing it, and I got hooked to the adrenaline rush of a very busy small bakery, and people were impressed by my ability to take 6 orders at a time and keep up with the line, and I was very young, and so I kept doing that and kept working in kitchens, but I got hooked at that age to the, it's so busy, are we gonna make it, are we gonna make it, are we gonna make it, are we gonna make it? It was awful, but I got hooked to that adrenaline rush and the idea of a very hard day of physical labor. And I dropped out of high school and kept working, got my GED, went to community college in Massachusetts, and kept working in kitchens. I went to culinary school, but I always just worked, and I was like, I'm just a good worker. I'm a good worker, and that was always kind of what I identified as, very much, like my grandparents, and I couldn't identify with a lot of the people I grew up with who went to college and were very scholarly, and I was like, I like to work. I like art, and it just feels right in my bones, and I just like, I can, when I started even my whole career and starting at Sylvania, when I got the job, it was like, I don't know a lot, but I'll work very hard, and eventually it was like people kept screaming to me, you're good at this, and I wasn't hearing it. I was like, I can just do what you ask me to do, and then after years of people saying, you have talent, it took a long time to finally realize, okay, Brooke, this is not just what you do or the only thing you know how to do, which is true, but you're good at it. So it started with work, and then ended up being like, you just skill, and then
Felt like that was what you wanted to do.
yeah, it became my career, and I love it.
Okay. Well, so with each of you, was there one person, or a chef, or maybe somebody you worked with, or someone who influenced you in your style of cooking, or thought, well, yeah, this is it. This is going to be what I want to do. Like maybe not a mentor, but somebody who really influenced you.
Well, I mean, personally for me, so I moved to New Orleans in 1999, and I worked at Emerald's when I first came here, and it was an amazing experience. We cooked for like 800 people at dinner service, and it was really intense, and I did learn a lot, but I knew in my heart that I was never going to run a restaurant where I was serving 800 to 1,000 people a day. This was not what I wanted to do. Kudos to them. Taught me some really great skills, but I was able to get an interview with Anne Kearney, who then was running a restaurant called Peristyle, the French Quarter. And the thing that I remember the most about Peristyle is that Anne was always there. Always there. I mean, we were open 5 days a week, we had great schedules, it was an amazing opportunity. It was so difficult, and I had no idea how difficult it was to get a job at Peristyle until I realized I was actually fighting just for the interview. And I was like, who do I know? How can I get in there? And I finally got in, and really we had this, and it sounds really cheesy, but we had this thing painted over the door of the kitchen. So the kitchen door, all the food that left, it had things that said food of love. And we just would put that into everything we did, and at the end of every service, no matter how well or how poorly you did, you knew that you'd done everything with as much passion that you possibly could. And that, to me, was just such an inspiring thing. I mean, Anne, she walked the walk. She wasn't one of those people who, I'm going to be here for 5 hours a day, I'm going to be here for an hour, and I'm not coming back. And that's something that I had to work with, I'm realizing
learned the trajectory of my career and how we keep passing that on. How can we be present and not always being in the room? You know, you have to find a way to have an influence over people, and she influences more than anyone, ever. Yeah.
I love that about passing it on and mentorship, and I imagine you all have that baked into how you lead.
Yeah. I think you kind of have to. I mean, it sort of starts happening at one point. I think you realize first from some of your mistakes that you make, and you see people doing things that maybe you not have taught them the best way to do it. You're like, wait. You know, I need you to take a break. I need you to do what's best for yourself. We have a thing at Coquette, and again, I always think it sounds a little funny, but we encourage people, like, if you're having a really hard time, you know, like, things happen. And if you need to take a mental health day, like, call me, be honest. Don't say I have a headache or I have a fever. Tell me I need to take a day today, and we'll make it happen. You know, you have to find a way to, like, encourage and foster, you know, healthy people to do a great job for you. Or else the food just doesn't taste as good.
That's rare. I will tell you that's pretty rare.
Yeah. I heard Ella Brennan say something. Can y'all hear me? I feel like say something once about women make wonderful restaurateurs because they have an innate nurturing something that makes them want to nurture people. So I'm seeing this with Anne and you. And I tend to feel like a mother sometimes to more than my 2 children.
But people are always like, why aren't you having children? I'm like, well, I don't want children. Yeah. And I have 45 of them. Yep. So I'm more than happy taking care of the 45 people around us.
Right. Yeah, I've seen
where this is coming from.
Oh, I've seen Kelly with a flock of her 25 children.
Yeah, I have 113 children at this point.
Is there someone who...
I feel really lucky that there's been so many people in my life that have influenced me and sort of taught me the way. It started with Susan Spicer in the 90s. She gave me a chance when she probably shouldn't have, and made me really understand that, like, I could do this, and this was a career that I could have. And I've had just a flock of people over the last 20 years come, and, you know, even this weekend we got to cook together. Cook together with a chef that I've admired for 20 years, and, you know, just bringing it full circle. And I think I'm inspired by everybody that surrounds me every single day, and it's always been that way.
I think for me, the first person not one of the first people I could really consider a mentor besides someone who just inspired me was Alex Harrell, who was the opening chef with me at Sylvain. And there's a lot of people probably in my past cooking before Sylvain that would consider themselves my mentors by how hard of a time they gave me and how much they feel they taught me. But and I did learn a lot from those people, but Alex Harrell was humble enough to allow me the freedom to go and do my own thing and trust me. And I, you know, when I moved down here, I'm from Washington, D.C., you know, I had somewhat of a preconceived notion about how it would be to work for a white Southern man from Alabama, and he proved me wrong, and he taught me a lot, and it was so compassionate and so warm, and he learned a lot from me as well in ways that he wasn't aware, and but it was always open, and just I definitely find him to be a mentor in how I want to be as a chef and as a human being, and to run a kitchen. And I know that both of us are guilty of not holding a lot of very strict boundaries between ourselves and our staff. And I think that's just something that we have in common personality-wise. And while I used to think of it as a flaw, I know it's just part of who I am and who he was, and he showed me how to do that while still running a successful business, our kitchen. And I see more and more other people doing the same thing, and it is very inspiring to see, you know, that it's possible to do both.
Okay, do you want to talk about food for a minute?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that.
Where do you draw, okay, you've been in the business for so long, and you've got to put out menus, and a lot of you change your menus often, seasonally anyway. So where do you draw inspiration for dishes, even for, technique? Do you look at cookbooks, cooking shows, travel? What is it? Eat out?
Yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration from going out to eat, whether it be, fine dining to hole in the wall to carry out. And a lot of inspiration from nostalgia and memories and seasons and how they make me feel and what memories they bring me back to and the dishes they bring me back to that I used to eat during that time. And a lot of that just comes to me in a feeling, I feel sad, or I feel vulnerable, I feel happy, or I smell something and it's like, remember when Mama used to make that dish, and I'm like, that's all that I want to make.
Smells are very...
smells are very powerful for me,
really are,
especially in New Orleans. There's a lot of them. There's good and the bad.
Good and bad.
But I draw a lot from that in, New Orleans. Like I said, there's a lot of, it's a very colorful city. There's a lot of things that will draw your attention or remind you of something. And once I remember that, that's what I want to do. And I want to recreate that memory, not just in the restaurant, but cooking at home. I want to feel it again.
Well, as a chef in New Orleans, do you find that people, is there a certain box within, at least for part of your menu, that you have to operate to be a New Orleans restaurant? Are there certain elements that you find that people want included, or is that not a factor?
I've never been, luckily, I was, very lucky to, work at Sylvain, where it was, people in New Orleans, they love good food. And they love real food, and if it's real and it has soul, and it just tastes very good, you don't have to work within those confines. And I worked at a restaurant that gave me 100% of creative control and trusted me enough and backed me enough to say, Martha, go ahead. And I did that, and they receive it well. And people aren't stupid, and they know what is BS and what is not.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep coming back if it's real.
I mean, that's the thing.
Especially here.
Well, I think that's the thing I was wondering about, because you have your locals who definitely know food. Like I said, it's my favorite eating city, but you have so many tourists too. So, but I've had your food, and I know how it speaks.
Well, I'm sure these women next to me can say that, the tourists. A lot of tourists that come here, they come here because it's a food town, and they come here to eat great food, and it's not just about the tourist traps. And I think that allows you either, if that's not what they're looking for, there's plenty of places doing that. So we don't have to cater to that.
That's great.
I think everybody on this stage, and every successful chef in New Orleans, we celebrate who we are, where we are, by our menu. And we don't get stuck in the just bread puddings, just the gumbos, just this and that. And I think New Orleans cuisine in the last 20 years has evolved to a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more poetic license, that I can have this on my menu and it can celebrate New Orleans because every part of it came from here. Like somebody loved every ingredient that was on that plate. And then whoever made it was loving it. And I think that translates in all of our restaurants. I hope that it does in mine. I know that it does in yours.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where do you draw inspiration from?
Everywhere.
Everywhere?
Everywhere. Like we consume social media, art, music, like every sort of medium you can get. I have a lot of travel. I'm fortunate to do a lot of travel and be inspired by that. I am most inspired by my 113 kids who come in every day with ideas of what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I just kind of give them the room to do it, and I get to take the credit somehow.
No, it seems like if you're not learning something every day,
Right.
you're not doing it right, right?
Right.
How about you,
And that
Kristen?
goes-
And
that goes
Kristen,
for
I've seen,
everybody.
I follow Kristen's, a lot of her social media. She's doing things like aging carrots with beef lard.
Yeah,
Like, where
it's
do you
really
come up
weird.
with that?
It's not really working out the way that we thought it would. It's like,
Trial and error.
It's 100% trial and error. I mean, I think as far as myself and what we do at Coquette, I think we draw a lot of inspiration from all the beautiful product that we have. I mean, I had the opportunity to work as a Crescent City farmers market manager. And so
Yeah, that was cool.
it's an amazing, and the Crescent
So you
City
know
Farmers
all the
Market is still
farmers.
an amazing institution in the city of New Orleans. And I think something that's really special is not just supporting local produce and local farmers and foragers, but the people behind it. And so one of the things that I think makes food taste even better is sort of knowing who you're purchasing it from, why they're doing it, what the money you're giving them for a beautiful product, where that money actually goes. That means so much more to me. I love knowing that something that I have purchased would pay for braces, or pay for chemotherapy, or pay for another couple acres, or whatnot. I mean, I just think it's such an amazing opportunity to be so much more in touch with your food, and it's so easy to be such a visual society right now. We're just sort of scrolling through it all, and it looks pretty, but when you can talk about what it is, where it's from, who made it, why they're doing it, why are they so obsessed with this, why can I only get frog legs this time of the year? Those are really special times. So the products I think that we have access to, we have almost a year-round growing season in Louisiana, which is a gift. And it comes with a lot of bad times and good times. But I think the other thing for me personally is when I was working at Peristyle in the early 90s or the late 90s, I would walk to work every day, and because I couldn't afford to have a car. And color was a huge inspiration for me. And so I'd be walking down the street, and I didn't have an iPhone, so I didn't listen to, or maybe I had a Walkman, I don't remember. But I would be walking down the street, and I would see a color, and be like, okay, what is yellow? All right, bananas are yellow. And I would just start sort of going through, what can we do with this? And that, for me, is something that I still play. It's sort of like my own personal I Spy game. When I'm by myself, or I'm traveling, or I see something, or I smell something, I'm like, oh, that reminds me of this. All right, how can I use that? Where can I put that? How does it make sense into what we do? So that, for me, I almost always need a trigger. But there are so many triggers.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I travel a lot, and I don't think there's any other city where I've been where even just the people who aren't chefs, who are general public, are more in tune with what happens to be in season. Like, everybody seems to know when the Ponchatoula strawberries are here. And
That's because we have a festival,
There's a festival
for
for
everything.
I mean, I overhear conversations, and I'll overhear the people's conversations, and they know when stuff
My
is.
favorite festival is the Shrimp and Petroleum Festival. How did they come up with that?
I mean, it's fitting. It's fitting.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Which, okay, brings me to my next question. What's your favorite season and your favorite crop, in that season?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
Do you have a favorite?
I don't know.
What do you
My
look
favorite
forward
is
to?
whatever's in front of me, really.
Really?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
strawberries right now,
Yeah, so,
blueberries tomorrow.
yeah, like I
it
really
doesn't
look
matter.
forward to spring and summer when all the
think spring and
fruit
summer
and
for
the
me are
berries
Yeah,
and
the hot
blueberries.
crops.
Because, spring is extremely busy, but summer, there's beautiful product that comes in the summer, and then
Nobody's
there's
No
one
business, I know.
I could spend
And there's-
$1,000 on
Yeah.
produce right now, and I can't give it away. I mean, there's just nothing. So that's when we started doing all of our canning. So we
Yeah.
got into a lot of
Yeah.
canning, and how do I preserve it
Pickling
and hold
and all
it so
that.
I can
Crab
share it
meat's
with people.
cheaper, but there's no one there to
Yeah,
eat it.
exactly. And then, our shellfish and our
Yeah.
fishing here is just, there are just so many, there's so many opportunities for good food.
Yeah, I
so many
mean,
opportunities.
I think, a lot of people's favorite season is fall because it's romantic and gets a little chilly. I mean, I don't know.
We don't have fall here.
I know, but
No.
that's what I'm saying. I don't think it translates here.
Fall and spring are like the same thing. They both last 5 days.
It's like spring and summer here,
That's
and
it.
that's what we have.
Yeah, but it brings out the like, I don't know, maybe it's just me.
No,
It's a very
no, I
emotional
mean,
time.
It is
Gets a
emotional
little
because we get 5
cold, I
days
get
of
my
it.
scarf on, I'm feeling very emo, and it's good. But I do, for food-wise, I'm into like when it gets warm and it's corn and tomatoes and okra and eggplant, and I'm like, yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
There's nobody there to do it with, but at home or whatever, it's so plentiful and it lasts well into
Yeah.
other people's fall, you know? We still have it. And I think that's really awesome. Things that I would not have gotten that far into that season north of here. I think that's great.
Okay, so if you had one piece of advice for home cooks, anything?
God, don't follow the recipe.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Stop.
You
Just
know,
do
like,
it.
just try it out.
Trial and error.
I don't have this herb. Use that one. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's
Keep it simple.
It's a guideline. It's not like
yeah,
rules.
it's not hard and fast.
Yeah, I always tell people, you can read the recipe, but then close the book and just kind of do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Unless it's a baking
And
recipe.
also, no, that's not true. You buy a scale. Buy a scale.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
nice
you're
one.
right.
Okay, so what's your favorite kitchen tool that you can't live without?
A spoon.
A spoon.
Okay, so the reason a spoon is my favorite, seriously, here's the thing. Like, you know, we have all these young cooks that work with us, and they all want to use these tweezers. Like, these tweezers for everything. And all I do is, like, when we get really busy, and they're using these tweezers,
Yes.
and then they just start to have really bad technique, right? And they start stabbing things. I'm like, it's not, no. It's a tweezer. It's like a tiny pair of tongs, you
It's
know?
just-
It's to be
They're
used
fingers.
gently.
Just use your
They're fingers.
hands.
Use your little tweezers,
my favorite.
or use a spoon. You know, I mean, I remember I
hands
used to
are
work. Yeah, I used to
indispensable.
work for a chef. His name was Frank Lee in Charleston, and
Oh, yeah.
Frank was great, and he was a hard ass. And there was a certain way that you held a spoon in Frank Lee's kitchen, and if you didn't hold it the right way, he would take his spoon, which he held properly, and he would whack you on the back of the palm with it. And if he got really upset, he would like maybe heat it up a little bit, and so you get that little thing. Don't tell
Don't do
Frank.
that.
Don't tell Frank. But no, he did. I mean, I don't do that. I mean, would never do that. But
No, I mean,
every time
don't
I see
hold it
someone
wrong.
using tweezers, like, please just use this beautiful, simple spoon. Like
Yeah.
that's it. This will get you done. This can do everything. It can stir everything. It turn everything. It
Yeah.
pull things out of the oven. It's the perfect tool. I think a spoon is the best thing ever.
Spoon's great.
And that's my spoon.
I'm going to
believer
tell you,
now.
a microplane
Yeah?
has changed the way because
Microplanes
I started
freak me out.
cooking in, like 35 years ago, and they didn't have that, and I used to bake a lot, and you had to grate everything on the big box grater, and
Right.
it was awful.
Yeah.
they
You know,
do.
your lemon
Yeah.
rind and everything, it was just terrible.
But like the zester
microplane
thing, like,
has
who uses
really
that thing
changed
anymore? Yeah.
the
Yeah,
way,
it's a different-
it makes me want to make a lemon pie, or,
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that in
And I
there.
just want to know, Kelly said hands too. I
My
love
hands, I cannot do anything with that. I use my hands constantly for scrape bowls and sometimes I put gloves on, but not really. My husband does.
I don't.
But I keep them immaculately clean.
And your chef's hand, you take a lot of
Abuse.
Yep.
Yeah, they
on
do
your
take
on
a
your
lot
hand.
of
I live in New York and I ride the subway all the time and I can tell who the chefs are just by looking at their hands.
Okay, here's another question about being in the kitchen. When you're hiring a new cook, what are the qualities that you look for in a fresh young cook coming in your kitchen?
A young cook? I don't know. I mean, if I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking at how long they've had most of their jobs.
Yep.
You know, if they had, they worked at all these fabulous places all within a year, I'm like, nope, please don't waste my time or your own. Longevity, being able to stick it out, at least a year under their belt at a given place for me is huge because, as we all know, this job is, in a lot of our kitchens, especially at Sylvain, it's small, it's hot, there's stairs, it's old building, you're gonna, it's not for the faint of heart. So if you couldn't last at most of these places for more than 6 months, you're probably not gonna last here, which is fine. It's not necessarily because they're bad people, it's just they're still trying this on, And that's something I definitely look at, is how long they've been at other places and what places they were, but that's not as much important to me as how long they put the time in and stayed with it, means a lot.
I look for people without egos, which is really hard to find.
Yeah, that's hard.
If you walk in and you think you know everything, or you think you're going to outwork everybody, or this, you're not going to fit into my kitchen. Like, we're all in it together.
So if somebody comes in and says, oh, I want to be the next Emerald Lagasse, or...
Show them where Emerald's is. It's right down the street.
Right, yeah.
They already have one.
I want to be the next John Bash.
Good luck. But, I mean, I'll be the first person. I mean, I feel like all I do most days is walk around my kitchen and say, I don't know. I'll find out, or we'll figure this out, or let's try that. I'm not sure. We'll do it together. And anybody that can't sort of acclimate to that, and somebody that wants to work for a chef that knows everything and has all the answers and thinks they've reached some sort of pinnacle, my kitchen's not going to be for them, because I'm never going to be that guy.
Yeah.
I can teach anybody anything that I know, and if they're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach them.
I think for us, one of the things, we have like an interview sheet, so you submit your resume and we call you in for an interview, and we don't have one for the front of the house and the back of the house. So we treat our restaurant as a whole. So the same questions that we ask our front of house employees are the same questions that we ask our back of house employees. I always ask, one of the things that I learned when I worked at Mobar was one of our questions was, what's your definition of hospitality? And that's a question that I ask all of my cooks, because you are the person who is responsible for making sure that we are being as hospitable as possible. There are so many ways for things to go wrong in a restaurant, and there are so many opportunities to make it go right. And I think we miss so many of those things sometimes. Like there are so many little places to make a difference, and my favorite things are things that people don't necessarily notice, or it's like, when they drop their napkin on the ground and you've already replaced the napkin, or if someone burns something in the kitchen, it doesn't walk out the door. Those are the things that we look for. So we look for people who actually want to carry on service and are interested in being hospitable to the people who are paying our bills. That's what we look for.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who wanted to be in the restaurant business like you are, or become a chef or a restaurateur one day, what would that be? I mean, what would you tell them to do? How to get started?
I actually was just talking to someone about this recently, about whether or not because I'm always on the fence about, younger people coming and asking, should I go to culinary school?
That's a good question.
And culinary school is so expensive.
Right.
And you're not going to make that money back for a long time. And that's for probably most professions that people go to college for, but I think specifically culinary arts. I mean, you're going to be working as a line cook through that, and then probably after that, you may get a job as a sous chef to build the foundation of your career, but that's a lot of hours. That's a stepping stone. That's earning your stripes. That's putting in the work, learning, and it's all of your time, and it's not necessarily more money. So I never want to discourage, a young person who's very passionate, inspired to say, no, don't go to culinary school. But I do think that it's not really played out to them how that might not financially work out for you in the next 20 years. However, I do very strongly recommend the local community colleges that we have that are far more affordable. And if you go there and spend, less than half the money and get your associate's degree, and you can still graduate from that other school with a bachelor's with that name on the degree or whatever is important to you. But I think that's one thing that I think needs to be discussed more. And there's really great, and especially in the city, programs that are you know, teaching young culinary students the things they need to learn and the things that are important, and placing them in jobs and getting them the skills that they need. And you know, as we all know, you can work your way up very far in this business, and I think that, so for early on, it would be to identify what it is you want out of this, and then decide if you need a $40,000 a year tuition degree to do that. And if it's not, then don't, because it's going to be miserable. You know, you're never, you know, I work with line cooks who they're never going to be able to pay off that, unfortunately. So I think it's something that just needs to be considered, and that our community colleges need to be supported or advertised more for culinary students as a way to go.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm super anti-culinary school.
Well, I think a lot of times people, the parents send the kids to culinary school before they've ever even worked in a restaurant, you know, step foot in one. I mean, let them work in a restaurant for 6 months, a year before you do that.
I started working in restaurants when I was 15. I was peeling carrots for my parents' friends that had a catering business.
Right.
And I think they thought
So
that was going to be a way to like get me out of it. I wouldn't
But it actually
enjoy it, but I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was like the guy that drove the hearse, and it was like this whole like great community of people that I was surrounded by, and it just sort of made me fall in a little bit deeper. And I was in a very fortunate situation where my parents essentially sent me to school. My parents had the option was you're going to go to culinary school or you're going to go to regular school.
Right.
And I did it, and I went for 2 years. After 2 years, I was done. I was learning more at my job that I was working at, 50 hours a week than I was in culinary school. So I decided not to get a 4-year degree from my culinary school. I left after 2, and that was good for me. I think it was a good foundation for me, but I just think that everyone's in a different place. I think what's good for some people is not going to be good for everyone. I think everyone needs to make their own decision, but you're right. I mean, to go to culinary school, spend $40,000 a year, walk out, and maybe make $10 an hour, it's not the most practical life decision, I
didn't go to culinary school, but I don't know, does anybody do apprenticeships anymore? I had an apprenticeship with a chef, and I had to give him a 3-year commitment.
Wow.
Does anyone do that anymore?
I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of labor laws that actually say you shouldn't and you can't.
Well, I got paid.
I mean, that's,
I got paid, though.
Everyone.
You got paid.
I was minimum wage, but I got paid. But, it was tough because I lived on nothing.
If I had someone that came to me and really wanted to apprentice under our team at Coquette,
but I thought it was,
I would seriously consider that, but the hunger is different.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of person that comes in to cook. And, I think there are resources available to you that are they're just so much more readily available. I mean, things that I spent pouring over. I remember reading James Peterson's Sauces book. It was my favorite book ever. And I would highlight it, and I had all these notes and all the things. But, I mean, now you can just,
Yeah, I mean,
Google
times were way different.
Yeah, very different.
And I gave that commitment, and I stuck to it, but I don't know about a lot of people would do that, right now. But, and it was, I thank goodness all the time, it was really, it was worth way more than any kind of culinary education, I think.
Right. I mean, I came and worked for you before the hurricane.
Oh, you did?
Not even for you. I just showed up a couple days and asked if I could follow you around the kitchen. And things that you showed me in those 3 days, I still use every day. Yeah, you guys were deep in it.
That's awesome.
You were deep in it. But every day, things that you taught me are still used in my own restaurant now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
See, you learn a lot when you work for, a busy place or a good chef. I think that's a good way to learn. Yeah.
I'm curious about who taught you each to be a boss. So you learn how to cook, you learn all these other things.
I'm the oldest of 6 kids. I'm naturally bossy.
It's a skill. It really is. And just because you can cook doesn't necessarily mean you can be a boss, but you're all really good at it. So how did you learn how to do that?
I don't know. I think it just does come naturally to me. But being a boss is hard. I think it's one of the toughest things, because especially if you work in a close environment with the people that work for you, because you don't always want to tell people to do things or have to discipline these people that are close to you. It's very difficult sometimes. And right now I'm mentoring my daughter to be the boss, and I'm trying to tell her that sometimes you have to keep your distance from your employees, because one day you may have to discipline them, and it just makes it that much more difficult. So it's a lot harder than it seems. Yeah.
I think accepting privilege and understanding compassion are probably two of the biggest things. I mean, when I left my role with LeBlanc and Smith and I went to Coquette, I told Michael, I was like, look, I'll come and do this, but I want to work in the front of the house for the first 6 months because I've never done it. I don't know how to use Open Table. I don't know how to use our point of sale system. I don't know how to do the books. I don't know how to do payroll.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do any of those things. And I felt like I was being a very irresponsible owner, like, oh, I'm just going to buy into this business, and now I'm the chef, and you have to listen to what I have to do. I wanted to actually contribute to our restaurant. I wanted to make it better. I probably made it a little worse. Like at the beginning, because I was like, oh, sure, that schedule change is fine. I was like, wait, why are we so short-staffed? Like making a schedule for the front of house and understanding, like, oh, we should probably have a glass polisher on Fridays and Saturdays. These things, I think, for me, working in the front of the house completely changed my dynamic of how I work with people in the kitchen. And I remember we had an amazing manager at Mobar. His name was Roger, and I remember calling Roger like 3 or 4 months into being at Coquette, and I was like, I am so sorry. I'm like, I was such an asshole all the time. Like, why aren't the menus printed? Why isn't stuff? Like, because I'm busy and I have to make a lot of people happy and I have to smile the entire time. I always walk into the kitchen. I manage one night a week at Coquette now in the front of the house, and I'll walk into the kitchen, and if Michael's on the expo line or on the pass, he's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. He's like, well, you're very serious. I'm like, I've been doing this for like 20 minutes. And like, you have to like come back and take a break. And I do, like, I want people to be happy, but it's really hard and people are yelling at you and they don't want to talk to you. And, I started as a host at Coquette. Like I started at the beginning, I started as a host. People walk in and
That's one of the hardest jobs.
They don't even talk to you.
It is
people
the hardest job in the restaurant.
I'm just going to walk right by this person. You're just like,
I was telling Pat, because my job has evolved from being, chef for years to restaurateur, and I'm telling you, when you're the chef and all you do is work in the kitchen, you think the front of the house is such a cakewalk.
And
but dealing with the...
they're making all this money. And,
excuse me, but dealing with the general public is very difficult.
It can also, on the other hand, be extremely...
Sometimes the kitchen is way safer.
It can also be extremely rewarding. Like the thing is, it can actually be really fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's where all the accolades come in.
The preconceived notions of being the person that works in the back is that, oh, they're making all this money, right? They're walking away with pockets full of cash, and they don't really do that much. I mean, they're delivering drinks, and but
it's really hard work.
Man, a 6-hour shift. Like, how hard can it possibly be?
Well, what I always tell my staff when they say that is like, well, if you would like to go do that, go ahead. Yeah. There's a reason why you're back here, because you're mean, and nobody wants to be around you. So.
It's real.
Yeah, it's real life.
It's real.
I cuss too much to ever be front of the house.
I do it at tables every once in a while, and I'll say like a
put her in the
table, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I'm not used to being out here.
Yeah, it's a
real kick in the face.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Kicking you in the face.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what were we talking about? Oh. All right, I got a question for y'all. What's the best thing about being a chef?
I don't buy groceries.
I still go to the grocery store.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess laundry detergent. I send Michael to laundry detergent.
I do I just do.
Amazon's for it now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
My favorite part is getting. There's a lot of little. I don't know. There's certain things that we get to eat that other people don't get to eat. Like we get that little crunchy bit off the end of a roast or something
Oh, that's
like
the best part about being
that.
a cook.
Yeah, that when you're cutting it and serve it, you save that little thing for
That's
yourself.
it.
That's my favorite part, hands down.
Eating the
You get it
turkey neck.
right out.
I'm gonna
You get that biscuit right out of the oven, or that little fatty, crispy thing that no one's ever going to get on their plate because it's never going to make it past us. That's my favorite part.
Yeah,
It's our-
no, I'm with you on
it's
that.
our
100
thing.
crunchies,
Or the pan stuff stuck on there.
My thing's cookies when they come out of the oven. Freshies, we call them. Oh, you got freshies? Let's do this.
Yeah. Fresh out of the oven stuff.
Yep.
The good bits. That's my favorite part.
That was easy.
Yeah, for me.
It was great. I was like, I know.
Do y'all, any of you have a story about like the worst day on the job that you'd like to share with us? Like, you know, a day that you just like, I'm just leaving.
The worst day of the
Yeah,
job.
just, you know,
There's a lot. I mean, I don't.
like, just,
I mean, I remember being a young cook at Emerald's, and
Uh-huh.
we were cooking for all of these people, and Chris Wilson was our chef de cuisine at the time, and I had paneed veal on my station, and it was just, it was so hard. I mean, it was Emerald, so like the veal's like this big. It's like one saute pan. I probably cooked 100
Oh, everybody
orders in a
ordered.
night, and towards the end of the night, I put up this piece of veal that was, I don't want to say burnt, because I don't want to say that I put something up that was burnt, but it was burnt. And it was a little too dark on one side, and I just put that side down on the plate. And like, nobody's going to notice, right? Like, I mean, they're all drunk. It's like fourth course. They're
We've all done
fine.
that.
And I was just tired and just beating myself up and burned. It was just a really hard day. And so I send it up to the pass, and Chris Wilson comes up, and he comes back to my part of the line to back saute, and he's holding the plate. And in my brain, I'm just like, shit. Like, he knows. Like, he saw it. Like, he probably could smell it, you know? So he comes over, and he's like, what is this? And he, like, keeps, as he's talking, he's, like, lifting the plate, like, higher and higher. And I was like, oh my God, what's he gonna do with the plate? And this is also, remember at this point in Emerald's history, we had the chef's table was in the kitchen. Like my station was right here and there's a table of 4 people, like Lenny Kravitz is sitting right here. And I'm right here and I'm about to get yelled at because I burnt a piece of veal and I put it on a plate. And Chris Wilson comes up and he has it. And as he's talking, it's coming up and he turns it over and he throws the veal on the floor and then he throws the plate on the floor. And we're just like, okay, well, I'm gonna, yes, chef, like I'm gonna recook that piece of veal right now, no problem. The one good thing about that is that there was somebody at the chef's table, I don't remember who it was. It wasn't Lenny Kravitz, that was another night. But it was someone who at the end of the service was like, he's so mean to you. Here's $20. And I was like, and I bought the whole kitchen beers. And I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna buy us beers. It's gonna be great, no big
That's
deal. But that was
awesome.
like one of the most, that was a night that I knew that I messed up and I knew I did something
You got
wrong.
called
And
out.
I tried to get past it and I should never have done it. And I learned, and I never did it again. Never did it again.
well, you learned a lesson,
Yes.
and he got called out.
Yeah, I got caught out. It was rough.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about how you handle your life with being a chef and restaurateur, because we all know, oof, it's hard. I mean, you know, you work long hours and your life is dedicated to the restaurant. So, I mean, how do you do it? How do you balance like having a relationship or a family or?
I don't have any
children.
of those things. So I have a dog and I have a dog walker, so we're cool.
Is that a, but Kelly, is that a conscientious decision
Surely.
that you made?
At this point in my life,
You
yes,
plan
absolutely.
on this being forever?
Who knows what the future
Yeah.
holds? Come on, I'm trying to get through today.
How about you? I mean, you and your
Well, the way we
significant
have a
other,
relationship is
yeah,
now
that you work
Like
together.
he has to see.
How
me
is
a
that
certain amount of
going?
time. It actually goes really
goes
well.
really
I
well?
was shocked. I really did not think
Uh-huh.
it would go as well as it did. We are really good at fighting in a really smart way. You know, like we don't hold things back. We actually, like when we have
Do you ever
an
have a
issue-
big blowout fight in front of the whole?
No, we
Okay,
absolutely
good.
do not.
That's
No.
good.
I think that's something we set a bunch of rules for ourselves when we started working together, and one of the first ones is that we would not fight in front of staff.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean we don't fight in the walk-in or like right outside the door, but we don't fight in front of everybody else. I mean, that's one of those things. But, you know, I mean, I've never, I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier, do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
So
it could be
it's gonna be like a
grand
big
finale,
shot. Like,
yeah.
woo!
Just twist it.
But I was not going to have children, so that for me has never been an issue. I have animals. Woo, there it is. I have animals, and I think the biggest thing is learning to say no. You know, we get a lot of requests from people for food and to go do certain events and to take time away from the restaurant. And I think learning to say no is one of the best skills I ever.
It's really hard,
It's
isn't
really,
it?
really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. How about you, Martha?
I don't know, that kind of, I don't know, I guess piggybacking on your last question of your worst days at a restaurant, and something that I've started to be a little bit more open about and vocal about is, like, you know, one of the hardest things I think for me as a woman and as a chef is that, and to use this as an example that is something I'm not quite comfortable with, but I'm gonna go ahead and my worst day at work was having to go to work early in the morning after having a domestic dispute with someone that I forgive and I love, but it was nonetheless a traumatizing situation and an unsafe situation, and leaving that and going to work and being like, I am not okay, but not feeling that I was allowed to allow myself to step away. That was my worst day, was being like, I need a minute, like I'm not good.
But you felt like you had to be at work.
Right, and it was like, chef, we need you on the line.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
Give me a minute, you know? And I couldn't have that minute. And that is hard. And that is something partially, like, I don't blame anybody for that. That is something that I felt I couldn't allow myself, because I felt that went with the nature of my job and my role as the executive chef. That sucked. And that is something that I learned a lot from. And I'm in a great place now, and how, it is very hard because you're demanded, especially, and a lot of, not to say I'm blaming myself entirely for the situation, but I did create a lot of that situation just based on my nature and not setting up these boundaries with the people that I work with, and them needing a lot from me mentally and emotionally, and my time and my acknowledgement and my attention, that left nothing for an outside relationship, that I, so it doesn't, and I'm saying it doesn't have to be, that was my experience. And so for me, it's important to see, and I'm very excited to learn from people like Kristen, and definitely somebody who taught me how to be a boss, how to do that, and how to not completely, entirely put myself out of the equation for the sake of my loved one, my staff, the business, the media, to make my family proud, whatever it is. Not, or be in a relationship or have kids. There's plenty of people who are doing it who have families. The family, like, that's my dream, I want to learn about that. I want to get back in touch with that and realize how to do it while taking care of myself, and still being compassionate and loving my staff and leading them, while also not allowing myself a mental day.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That's brave and amazing and stuff. And I think hearing that from other chefs is absolutely huge. You mentioned fighting in the walk-in. I remember Alex Cornicelli telling me, like, during a Q&A like this a couple of years ago, about the visceral joy of crying in the walk-in. Chefs don't talk about this to each other, from what I gather, but have you all cried in the walk-in?
I haven't cried. I would go into the walk-in, like face the carrots and just scream into the carrots. Just be like, why is this so hard? Like, it's not so hard. Like, I can't believe it's just dinner.
For me, it was
just dinner.
Scream
like,
in the walk-in, cry in the bathroom.
And then
We
just,
never had a
go.
walk-in.
Oh, I hide in the bathroom.
You hide in the bathroom?
We keep butter in the freezer, and I throw butter at the wall.
What? I don't have a walk-in freezer.
Anybody that's here that works with
amazing.
me, you're not allowed to repeat that. I throw butter. I'm
Like
pretty
chunks
good.
of butter, or
No,
what's
like
your-
pounds of
Pounds
butter.
of
how it
butter.
comes.
They're like rocks.
I think when you write a memoir, it's going to be throwing butter at the wall.
Yeah.
Frozen butter.
I want to read a memoir by each one of you because you've all got a lot to say. But like chefs really don't get a chance to, and especially women chefs, show their human side all the time. Or maybe do you feel like you are allowed to, that your particular staff, you feel comfortable being emotional in front of?
I was always allowed to.
Ooh.
It wasn't.
You don't want to be.
Yeah, it wasn't a something that was put on me. I worked in a great environment and with a lot of support.
That's huge.
It was the not wanting to let you see me cry. So I go in the bathroom. I need 10 minutes. I'll be back. I'm good, you know, and not appearing that they could break me or that they couldn't count on me. Or, you know, because it gets pretty hectic in there, and sometimes it's like, I don't know what's going on, and you're like, it's fine. Get it together. We're gonna make
Cold
it,
water.
you know?
It's gonna be all right.
We're gonna make it, and you're like, you know, crying in the bathroom. It's fine. Everything's fine.
I think in any situation where you're leading people, you always want to be the best version of yourself so that you are influencing them in the best way. But I also think that there is a certain part of that vulnerability that allows people to know that you're still a human being, and that you have feelings. And there are situations at the restaurant on a daily basis where I'm not necessarily angry, I'm disappointed. You know, like we have all of these fantastic young people that work for us, and I want them to continue to do a great job, and I want them to push themselves, and I want them to ask me questions, and then they can't show up on time for work.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you know, I want to be your advocate. I want you to do well. I want you to succeed. I want to open restaurants for you. Like, let me do
Yeah.
that. But if you can't show up on work for time, I cannot help you.
Yeah.
I cannot help you. There are certain basic minimum things that I need people to do. It's a very fresh thing for me, by the way. This just happened the other day. But I was just like, you know, like, and they come to you with their stories, and I'm like, you know, we all have stories. I have stories I could tell you about. I appreciate that you've been supporting yourself since you're 13, and, you know, like, that's great. But if you want to do more, if you want to be more, then you have to invest in yourself. And if you're not invested in yourself and you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be the best version of yourself, and you're never going to be able to do more.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Like, if you want to do more, if you want to have an impact, be the best version of yourself, pass that on to people.
And everything you do matters.
And everything you do.
Everything you
Every
do.
single action. Pay for parking.
Thank you.
That was a big thing about working in the French Quarter. It's like, pay for parking. You know, like, what do you want me to do? Insure your motorcycle.
I always thought there should be
Come on.
a month out of the year where we were closed, where everybody could handle their warrants and their
Please
traffic
go to court.
tickets and all that. So it was, because that's always, hey, chef, I got pulled over, I'm going to jail. All right, well, you have 7 warrants. Why are you driving? You know?
Yeah.
Had to get to work. If we could have a month, you know, just a nationwide restaurant close deal with your.
France does that.
Of
I mean, not
course
for the
they
same
do.
reasons,
Okay,
but
yeah.
they do shut down.
Where they can
Take
go
naps.
to handle their traffic tickets and whatnot. It would help the restaurant business a lot, or at least my staff.
Yeah.
Okay, Kat has a question.
So actually, Kelly, I've asked you this one before, and I hope you will share the same answer to it. What is the thing, chefs are not necessarily known for their self-care so much, taking that moment for you, proactively doing something for your physical and mental health. What is the thing that you do for yourself, or that you would like to do for yourself? Just take care of mind, body, spirit.
I'll go first because she asked me this a couple weeks ago in Miami. And my answer there was I have started a routine where I don't just get up out of bed, take a shower, go to work. I cook myself breakfast, I go for a run, like I do all these things that sort of make me start my day in an intentional way rather than just sort of like being on the cycle. I've not stopped thinking about that question since you asked me though. And I think a lot of things, even like drinking water, I think we talked about that the other day, like me and my whole staff are on a gallon a day challenge, and I am embarrassed by how different I feel from drinking water. That and even the power of saying in my kitchen, I don't know, to my staff has completely changed my life.
Wow.
That's extraordinary.
I mean, I would love to say that I like get up and exercise every day. I think the biggest thing that I do for myself is I forgive myself. I got a dog.
Oh, okay.
Michael runs the dog. I don't run the dog. I mean, I forgive myself for like the poor decision. Like if sometimes you just have a long night or even a day off, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay in bed and I'm gonna watch Netflix all day.
Yes.
And I'm gonna eat popcorn, and that is okay. Like that's okay. It's not every day, obviously, but. You know, I think being able to forgive yourself for just like taking a little bit of time for yourself is something that's really important. So, you know, that's what I do. I forgive myself a lot.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I do too.
I mean, you know.
I allow
I
myself.
still have a daughter at home, you know, and so I spend a lot, this year, she's going to be senior in high school. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time at home with her. And yeah, I don't work as much as I used to. So yeah, I try to, and it doesn't matter if I'm at home or if I'm at work, I feel guilty. So what the hell? Yeah, she's important, so.
And you just phrased it, you said, I allow myself.
Like she said, yeah, I allow myself to do that, you know. I try not to be hard on myself for taking a moment, for indulging myself, for whatever it may be. And I think partially, so, you know, in this time that I have now is to learn how, because it doesn't always, or at least for me, lend itself as I, you know, usually would have not a lot of time off to it ultimately taking care of myself. So it's like, all right, I'm going to allow myself to, you know, eat whatever I want, drink whatever I want, you know, not go refill my prescription, not, you know, clean my house, not, you know, do laundry. I'll just go buy new socks, you know, like it's not a long-term, you know, your life, you come and go. I come, I drop my, you know, stuff, I get in the shower, I go to bed. I wake up, I grab my stuff, I go out and I do the same thing, you know, every day. And then when I'm off, you know, sometimes I do yoga, sometimes I go to Little Dizzy's around the corner, I eat more than 2 servings of fried chicken and everything else, and I go get back in bed and stay in there the whole day.
That sounds great.
It's great, but it's not healthy in the long term, you know?
Are you happy?
It's an indulgence.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
I am,
Then it's healthy.
but there's two, because I'm all about that life. I don't care. I mean, I don't care about that, but ultimately I haven't. It's nice to be allowed to allow myself the time to do that, and then do yoga the next day, or get some sleep, take a bubble bath, go for a long walk, go see a movie, learn something new, read a book, whatever it may be, you know.
I think another
it's got to be a
thing-
balance,
another
like she
thing
said.
that for me is really important is defining what success is for me. I think there are so many opportunities, like in this world that we live in right now, like this person's on this list and this person's on that list, and you know, I think that the lists and everything are great for the people that are on them. That's a fantastic thing. But if you're not on the list, it doesn't mean that you're shit. You know,
No.
like
Absolutely.
I think you have
Yeah.
to really
Stood out.
define what
Or
your
you don't
own version of
exist.
success is, and be like, I'm really happy with what I did today. I'm really happy with, you know, the amount of revenue we brought into the restaurant. I'm really happy with the amount of people that left happy and with full bellies. Like, these are the things that define success for me. And I think when you find a way to define your own success, you stop putting yourself up against what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and
a
that's
good-
good. That's
Very good point,
healthy.
Kristen. Kelly, I want you to tell me about Yes Ma'am.
What do you want to know?
Well, I want to know what it is. And the audience
So
wants to
Yes
know.
Ma'am is a foundation that I started last year. And the goal of the foundation is to invest in women, just period, celebrate who we are, and to celebrate the fact that we are worth all of that. We started off with a big dinner last summer where I invited like 5 of my favorite chefs who inspire me to come in and cook. We actually had a dinner on Saturday. Kristen was part of it. Martha was there. Kat was there. Like everybody was there having a good time. And so we're fundraising now so that we'll open up applications to be sort of we make your dreams come true for women of the South and invest in the women that nourish us and inspire us as a whole, as an industry, to continue their education and their growth in any way that they really see that for themselves.
Oh, that's terrific. So what's the goal, to raise money?
We're in fundraising phase right now, so we're going to spend the next, we're spending 2018 fundraising. By 2019, I would like to start giving grants to women. The pipe dream is that this is a national organization, and we are investing in women as far as like restaurants go, because it is so hard for us to have the same access to the most basic funding and investment.
My sister and I were talking about that just the other day, about how hard it is for women to get financing.
And none of us really know where to go.
Yeah.
So I want to be the place that women know that they can come and get what they need.
Good for you. Yeah. Good. Well, we're about to wrap this up. So does anybody have anything they'd like to add? Anything
Thank you.
want to talk about?
This is great.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would, like to say too is talking about earlier real quick, as you were saying about using local ingredients and from Louisiana. I think it's just as important to support our local businesses and small businesses and our Black-owned businesses, and in New Orleans is something that is really important to me, and I'm really excited about that's going on here, and I'm very proud of that, and that's it.
I like to do that too. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, ladies.
Cheers, Mary.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, y'all.
I know I do.
Oh, I lost my swinging. That was an amazing panel. I would be remiss if we have Leah Chase in the house, and I didn't pass the microphone down here for just a minute. Estelle.
Well, this is some experience for me. I look at these ladies, and it's, oh, thank you, Mr. Chase. Mother, wait. Mother, you got to look this way. Mother, you got to do this. Mother, you got to do that. I told them their daddy never gave me all those rules. I did what I want. Anyway, I listen to these ladies. First base, I look at what they're drinking. I came up with a different kind of chefs. They didn't drink champagne. They drank their Cuttersalk, their gin, whatever. They drank a little tougher than those ladies up there. But it's really interesting to see how far this has come. When I started in the front of the house, but I always went to the back to see what they were doing in the back. And when I asked the question back there in 1940, I started, and there was no women at all in the kitchen. So I said, well, why? I don't see any women in here. The answer was, women can't pick up these pots. And I looked at him and I said, well, I don't see you picking them up either. The dishwasher was picking them up. So I got a stickler for doing what I had to do. But my job when I came into the kitchen, it was at Dookie Chase's. I came there to be a waitress, to be the front of the house, but they had nobody in the back. So that knew where I was coming from, so I had to start in the back of the house. Now, if you ever heard of make it, fake it till you make it, that's what I had to do. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. So I would say I could do something, and when I came back home, I had to back up my mouth and get all the books I could get, listen to everybody I could listen to and just do it. I'm proud of these ladies who come in and can do that. Now, I heard Madam on the end there say when she's frustrated, she's just, when I'm frustrated, I go to my pots. I can, if anything comes my way that I can't handle, I go in my kitchen and I can handle it. I lost my mother, I stayed in the kitchen. Lost my daughter, stayed in the kitchen. Lost my husband, I was in the kitchen when he died. I had to stay there and do that. And that's how it gets me, it eases me up. I can go to the kitchen and go to those pots, and it just helps me out a whole lot. So that's where I stay, and that's my life. And I really like what I'm doing, and it's a pleasure for me when you go to see the front of the house, when you make so many people happy just cooking for them. That's pretty good. I feel honored at doing that. And I'm proud to see these young women today, and they can work. You know, when I started, there were no women in the kitchen. Would you believe all these big restaurants? There was one restaurant called Dunbar's. You people are too young to know about Dunbar's. But nobody knew who was in that kitchen. And in that kitchen at Dunbar's on St. Charles Avenue were all African-American women. They had one man there, a black man, who was on the door. He was a butler. But these were all women running that restaurant. And it wasn't until Rudy Lombard wrote a book and brought this out that these women were in that kitchen doing that. And he's the one who really brought me around and let me be with all the chefs that, you know, came about. And they were not easy to deal with. They were kind of rough guys. But I just stood my own and stood there. And, you know, when you tell me I can't do something, it's the worst thing you can do. Because when you say I can't, I'm going to prove to you that I can. And I think that's how Dookie got me to do so many things that I didn't. He say, honey, you can't do that. You can't. Oh, I think he did that on purpose just to see me get up and do this, girl. I know you can do it, and I did it. But it's a pleasure to see you come around. It's a pleasure to see women in the kitchen and women being entrepreneurs. And I went to, when I was in the kitchen, there was a woman who was supposed to be the worst critic in the world, Mimi Sheraton. I don't know if you knew Mimi Sheraton. They put out everywhere she went. I read the newspaper, and I understood that Mimi Sheraton had visited Dookie Chase's. Oh, God. I said, I know I'm getting 0. But she gave me a high mark. Oh, she put me way up there. So that gave me courage to keep going. And people help you to keep going. When somebody try to knock you down, all you do is dust off your shoes and keep going. I was going to do that when one critic just gave me down the road, brought me from 4 beans to 1 bean. I was, well, I said, I got to correct it. I got to do what I have to do. Then this lady, Ella Brennan, came. She said, they'll not do this to you. And she backed me up all the way and helped me get up on my feet again. And from there, I just made it. You just do what you have to do. But my pots are the thing that just takes me through everything. And when I see these pots and people don't respect my pots, I get quite angry. You know, and I tell them in my kitchen, black is beautiful, but not on the bottom of my pots. Scrub these pots. So, and the new breed can't understand scrubbing my pots, but that's it for me. The pots are my savior. And I like going out, and I live and eat this restaurant business. My pleasure is going to see what other people are doing, see what they're doing, see how they do things, and enjoy seeing other people come up. The more the merrier. You come in the neighborhood, you just give me courage to keep going, and it's a wonderful thing. So thank all of you, and thank you, ladies, and hang in there.
Yes.
And keep sipping that champagne. But I rather my color Sprite. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.